Wait, there it goes. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to a very special carb-filled episode of Small Town Failing Podcast. I am your host, Joe, as usual. Joined this week by first-time guest, and I am over the moon excited, if that's a term people use still. But from indestructiblefood.com, Sarah Dudek, I think I got it right that time,
You got it. You got it.
is here. Thank you so much for coming on and watching this movie and just being here. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm stoked.
So Sarah, I on the next episode, I tried to explain art in my colorblind staffing partner, like what I do way. But so the work you do is illustrations, kind of exactly what you kind of say, right? Indestructible food. So it's like these kind of amazing prints that kind of look old timey, maybe is the
Yeah.
word, but you describe it. I'm doing a terrible job.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I was watching the nightly news every night, which is something I never do.
Oof.
And almost all the stories involved people in these like mile-long lines at food banks because food
Mm.
insecurity just skyrocketed instantly, right? Um, and I started thinking about shelf-stable foods, which are foods that are really engineered to take us through tough times. And I was thinking about how people like really talk a ton of trash about them, and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't eat that. You should only eat for the perimeters of the store." And I was like, "Right, like it's cute to say things like that, but like when a hurricane comes, you're gonna be pretty glad that somebody gave you a can of Dinty Moore, yes? Or
Exactly.
like when
Yep.
someone loses their job, or like whatever." And I was like, "Listen, like I bet if I researched and wrote about these foods and how they came about and how they grant access, people would be interested." So I write these little book reports about these foods and I illustrate them um, in hopes that I can bring sort of awareness of the unfiner things in life. Yeah.
I love that because and we were kind of talking about it before we hit record. And I know I've told this story about 100 times, like every episode, but like that was kind of what kicked off this podcast too, right? Like in the middle of
Yeah.
the pandemic, I needed some sort of outlet, and like these movies, and Hallmark, I should say, the movie we're watching tonight is The Baker's Son. Like these movies were kind of like my comfort food, and like
Yeah.
same thing. My wife and I I don't know if the like right phrase is caught up in the pandemic, but like two kids terrified of
Right.
everything out there. It felt like
Yep.
the world was coming to an end. And it's like, you watch the news, you're constantly getting updates. We're literally scrubbing down our groceries with like Clorox
Yep.
wipes. And it's like, all right, I don't want to watch, Schindler's List for a hundredth
NCIS.
time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like
Yeah.
I need something that's going to make me happy. I know what's going to happen, and just like, maybe make me smile for like an hour and a half. So I love
Uh-huh.
that. So my
Yeah.
big question is like the thing, and I have to thank Christopher Micken, the failed Imagineer, who was on a couple episodes ago, because he's the one that kind of, you know, through him, I started following a lot of folks that he follows and got interested in like yours, in particular, like the Necco wafers, the candy corn, the spam, like all
Yeah.
these things are things that I love and have to constantly justify, even with Leslie, my wife. Like, so my
Sure.
question is, a lot of these foods that you've kind of highlighted and done the book reports and illustrations of, do you actually enjoy them, or is it more of like this is what I find interesting?
Yeah. I approach them all with respect. I believe that like there aren't bad food choices, and I am not about yucking someone's yum, certainly.
Nice.
Um, we talked about that with the movies a little bit too. It's like, right, like you could rag on something, but you don't need to trash it because someone else might love it, right?
Exactly.
And I will say most of the stuff, and this is what I tell sort of my whatever my friends and followers around the project is like, if you think you hate something, find someone who loves it and have them make it for you. And then
Oh,
see if at least you'll respect it a little bit more because a lot of folks hate spam because they've approached it from like the angle of like Caucasian poverty, which
yeah.
is like a certain way of preparation. And then they have it in a way that's prepared by Hawaiian Islanders or people from the
Mhm.
Philippines or Korean folks, and you're like, oh shoot, this could be good. And it's like,
Yeah.
great, like let's. But like deviled ham, I love, and I think it's so cool, but like it's not for me. Like,
It's funny you say spam because like I had that exact experience, and I had always been kind of obsessed with it is not the right word because it sounds like a little crazy, but like when I was a kid, I was very much into Weird Al, and I feel like every
yeah,
other song he mentioned spam. So like just kind of the whole aura around spam I thought was kind of amazing. And I'd gotten a few times and made it and like, oh, this isn't for me. But then we went to the Milwaukee State Fair and spam actually had a booth and they had it like fried in a slider, like kind of prepared. And I'm like, this is amazing.
yeah,
Like,
right,
um,
yeah,
I will say around the holidays, they made a figgy pudding version.
they sure did, yeah.
Not for me.
For
Which,
you. Yeah, that's fair. I was like, I could see it being good in like a maple sausage sort of way. Like I
mm,
get where like it could be like, oh, like a sweet sort of fatty thing is sometimes great.
yeah,
I did not try it myself though, so I'll take your word for it.
we still have a can if you're interested. We
Oh my goodness, yeah. You drop that in the mail tomorrow, I'll eat it this week.
I'll probably have like, protective services on me. I was
Yes.
so we made it with some friends of ours, and at first bite, I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought. But then as it went on, I'm like, all right, I get it. This is this
Yeah.
is kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
a thing. So of the kind of illustrations you've done, what would you say? Well, I guess what was the first one? Like when you started this series, what was like, all right, this is where I'm starting. This is kind of the quintessential indestructible food.
So the first one I drew actually was a giant can of beefaroni, which actually is
Huh?
not an illustrated, like it's not a print, and I didn't write an article, but it was just like I felt moved to do it, and that grew into the project. But Chef Boyardee is like it's a
Yeah.
whole genre of indestructible food, and there's
Yeah.
so many lovely things. And when you think about it, like British people really first experienced pasta canned, I believe. Like that's
Wow.
right. Like they were like, oh right, yeah, like it comes in a tin. Of course it does. So the fact that like this is the venue to deliver tinned pasta to Americans, to this day is pretty incredible. But yeah, I keep meaning, I'm like, oh shoot, I should just like clean up that illustration and write a story about it and
Get
get
it
it
out
up.
there.
And I still haven't, but yeah, yeah.
That was the one that kicked up. That's funny you say that because I remember the first time. I'm originally from the East Coast. I grew up in upstate New York, and my wife and I lived in Jersey for about 13 years when we both worked in New York City. And I remember the first time, like I had been to Canada and around like when I was younger, but the first time we did like a real trip up there for like 2 weeks, kind of bouncing all over the place, we did eat at like two different Italian places. And I remember thinking their pasta sauce tastes exactly like Chef Boyardee,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
which,
you run into that every now and again. You're
yeah,
like, what in the world? Yes.
two separate places. It was interesting because it tasted like Chef Boyardee, and also for whatever reason, at both places they put a sliced green bell pepper on the top, which I
Uh-huh.
didn't really understand why. But I could see, like, if you're really into Italian food, being almost offended by it. But like Leslie and I were like, "This is amazing! Like,
Yeah,
should we move?"
what whatever the hell this is, I'm here for it. Yeah. Yes.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's incredible.
And then the last question, what is kind of your favorite one that you've done as far as like the food? Like what is kind of your go-to like candy or
Yeah.
potted meat?
Here's like my favorite one. So the Cheetos bag of bones, it's like the
Mm,
Halloween edition Cheetos.
yeah.
Um, my friend Sarah invented those, which you're like, no way. And I'm like, no, let me tell you. So she was working at Goodby Silverstein in San Francisco on the Cheetos account, and she was writing Chester the Cheetah's tweets as one does. Um,
Wow.
and she was bored out of her mind because Chester Cheetah only says like a certain amount of things. So like writing his
Yeah.
tweets was not fulfilling. Um, and so every day she'd bring like piles of ideas to her boss's office and just be like, what
Wow.
about this? What about this? And one day she walked in and said, dude, but for Halloween, couldn't they make Cheetos in the shape of bones and you could like make your own skeleton? It would be so fun. And he was like, that's not bad. And they baked it into their scope of work for the year. Cheetos killed everything except that. They were on store shelves in like 6 months.
Wow. That is
I mean,
amazing.
like, the illustration's like fun. Like I had fun doing it. I'm
Yeah.
not like a I'm not great at characters. Like my Quaker Oats man, like people are like, I don't like the look of him. Like it's not like I'm not like great at characters. Um, but yeah, but I was satisfied with that, and I was able to sort of send a tribute to my friend who invented a whole snack food, which is
That is
bonkers.
amazing. I'm actually looking at it right now. That is crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Um, so rapid fire Necco wafers, are you a fan?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Terrific. What
I'm a
did
fan of them because I'm a fan of things that like don't change no matter what, even if they aren't that good to begin with. The Tootsie Roll is the same. Like
yeah.
it's like it or not, like you know exactly what you're getting.
I think that's a lot of it. That's a really good point. Like Necco wafers for me when I was a kid, like I grew up in the 80s and for like Halloween, you got like those small ones in the bag and like you just ate
Yeah.
whatever candy you got. And like now
Yeah.
it's part nostalgia, but part like I just generally like the flavor, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's with coffee when you first taste it and like this is awful, but eventually, you need the
You
pick me
become
up so you
acclimated.
force it up. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
how like we all started drinking beer in college. Like this tastes
Yes.
awful, but you know, so
It's worth
that's
it. It's worth it.
how did you take it when they got rid of Necco, like when they went under for a little while?
Yeah, that was a rough time, right? Because like I was living in Boston then. I walked by the Necco wafer factory every day on my way
Oh,
like down the red line from the agency to my house. And yeah, it was sad when they moved because everyone's grandma worked there.
yeah, I
Like
was gonna say,
literally, like
like
you'd
that's
meet
gotta be.
anyone and they were like, yeah, they were like, oh my grandma or my grandpa works at Necco. Um, And then the new company decided to change. You might have missed this. I'm not. It was short lived. They changed the formula. They added
Oh, I
glycerin
didn't
so
realize
that
that.
they were softer, and then
Mm-mm,
they
no.
also changed all the coloring because they were like no artificial colors. But like no one in
No.
the history of the world has ever eaten enough Necco wafers for it to matter that
Yeah,
it's artificially
nobody's like
colored,
switching
correct?
over,
Like
like, finally, they're all natural. Now I'm gonna get into them.
it's like someone told them that like moms would be like more likely to buy them if they
Yeah.
didn't have artificial
No.
like no moms aren't like oh yeah like I was looking for a treat for my children and I just got Necco wafers like
Yeah.
no
Because now they're natural. I do like that, and
yeah
I love that. That's a great point. Like, because outside of Chicago, we have the Ferrero candy. I'm
Re-
saying the name wrong,
yeah
but like they make the Boston baked beans, the lemon heads,
yeah
like all those, like, and same thing. Like they
classic
have not changed in 600 years or however long they've been
uh-huh
around. All right. So speaking of the pandemic, my
the
pandemic
segue
kind of whatever hobby like every other NPR listener was sourdough bread, and
yep
my starter is actually 3 years old now, like we're still hanging together, um
classic
which for this movie The Baker's Son I feel like is a perfect segue.
uh-huh
I don't even know where to begin. So 2021, a Hallmark movie, so a couple of years old, directed by Mark Jean, who I don't know if you looked at the IMDb, but Mark Jean directed at least 2 or 3 episodes of every show in the 80s and 90s that you didn't remember was a show. Like
oh yeah
like every random like spin-off from a movie that you didn't think they actually made a TV show about, he had something to do.
right
Like, and he's been around forever. Like, and this wasn't a movie, but like Parker Lewis Can't Lose, he directed a few episodes of
yeah
that. Weird Science, the TV
uh-huh
series. um, so he directed this, starring Eloise Mumford, who was in the movie You're Baking Me Crazy that we just did a few weeks
oh
back.
that's
Yeah,
amazing I saw part of that episode and I was like I didn't know it was her.
surprisingly, not much bacon in You're Baking Me Crazy, which is
I was
disappointing.
disappointed. Yeah.
Um, but I'm sure you and everybody else remembers her as the best friend from the 50 Shades series, the movies. And Matt Duvall, who plays kind of the love interest, who was also in one of the 50 Shades movies. So I guess you could say this was a reunion. But so sorry, we should step back. Your history with Hallmark movies, which I kind of already know, but I think it's interesting. This was kind of your first delve into this world, right?
It was. It was. I'm dipping my toe into the waters to see if I will continue this quest.
Yeah. And I have to say, this one, and we talked about it before, this one was a mind fuck. Like, there's so much going on
Yeah.
here, a lot of questions. And I
Yes.
think we even messaged last night when I kind of posted up people to send in questions and stuff. You know, you had mentioned I have a lot of thoughts, and I sent back, like, I'm 10 minutes in and I'm like already lost. Like, there was like 90 characters introduced,
Yeah.
there was about 5 info dumps. Like, this
Yeah.
is not the typical Hallmark movie in that, you know, kind of like we were talking before, like it's very comfort food. You turn it on, you relax. Like, this one, I actually had to pause and rewind at least 5 or 6 times because I felt like
Uh-huh.
I missed something. And sometimes I
Yeah.
didn't miss anything, it just wasn't explained. But sometimes I did.
I was like, there must have been development there. No, no, there was
No,
not.
no. So I guess my question, like, what was your preconceived notions of Hallmark movies, or like, what was your, you know, I don't want to say misconceptions, but
Right, right, right. So I felt like I am a big fan of the genre of gentle viewing. And like gentle viewing can be rewatching things you've watched 100 times, or it can be like QVC is gentle
Mm,
viewing. So like when your life feels super hard, um, and it's the end of the day and you're like, I got nothing else. I don't want to solve a mystery and I don't want to learn anything. Like I just want like something mild to come at me and
yeah.
wash around me. And I sort of was like, oh right, like the Hallmark Channel is that. Like it's new content that's so gentle that like
Hmm.
it doesn't affect you in any way. Just it's my like soaking in a warm tub. That's what I thought it would be.
Yeah, and I think that's valid. Another question now: do you watch QVC?
Oh yes, yes.
This episode's going to be about 3 hours long. How big of a, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, 12 being the right answer? How big a fan of David are you? And In the Kitchen with David.
I tune in not only on Sundays but also on Wednesday nights. I'm just saying, like I'm with David. If he's on the air, I'm like, what's David up to?
I
Like,
love
yeah,
it.
we both we sit down and we're like, listen, and he's just so charming. He is the definition of comfort viewing.
He is, and I gotta say, like, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, where there was a lot of like, you know, this isn't real, like, why are we being locked in and blah blah blah. QVC, and maybe this is the right, you know, idea or not, I was expecting to kind of veer that way. And I remember David, and I'm not ashamed to admit, I do go on his like Instagram live and just watch him
Sure.
sometimes. I remember the first time he posted, like, you know, a picture of him in his garden saying like, just be safe out there, blah, blah. Like,
Yeah.
there was so many comments and they were all just like, thanks, David, we're doing great. Like, everybody was so positive and like
Yeah.
legit, it was like the exact thing you're saying. I went there and we started watching a lot of QVC just because it was like, everybody seems nice here, and like everybody in the
Yeah.
comments is being nice, and I'm sure it's being monitored and they're filtering
Sure.
out some stuff, but it was just like the
Yeah.
number of people that I would expect to be like, you know, just posting MAGA tweets or something. I was just like,
Right.
this is so
Nope.
nice. Like, you know,
Yes.
I think the first time I heard it, like, I got misty just because everything was so awful everywhere else. It was like, this is great. So
It's so
sorry.
true. Yeah, it's an aside, but I think an important one. We're on the
Absolutely.
same page with our
Yeah.
viewing.
I am happy that I read for a while that they weren't allowed to eat on camera because people were complaining. And we watched the other day, and I hadn't watched in a little while, but I saw him like eating lollipops or something. And I'm like, oh, I'm happy David gets to eat again. Like,
Well, especially because he's talking about his low carb all the time, and
yeah,
it's like 1,000 people come in with mail order meat, and they won't let him have any. Like that's
yeah.
like literally his wheelhouse.
Oh, the meat where like it's just always they cut it in half and then stack it and then squash it with like the wife and I were just like, I don't know how much I can watch of this, but
It's
we do
horrible. Yeah, the juice squeezing. It happens with tomatoes too when they have a sharp
everything,
knife, and it's like no, yeah, they can
everything.
squeeze moisture out of it. They do it. They absolutely do. Oh no.
But
Anyhow,
anywho, the movie that we watched, The Baker's Son. So Eloise Mumford stars as Annie, and her and Matt are best friends that live in this small town, or pretty much an island. And I'm not sure if they picked up or I picked up where this is supposed to be, but like you get the idea. It's like off the Cape or, someplace
I
like
think
in
it's
these.
actually off the coast of Seattle.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, because they
Yeah,
mentioned Seattle constantly. Yeah.
a lot.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. At least that's my assumption. I could be
yeah.
wrong.
I think you're probably right. When the Seattle news stations keep showing up, that it probably makes sense that they weren't like flying across the country.
Yeah,
So Annie runs this restaurant. Matt is a baker. His
yeah.
father, I guess, kind of owned this bake shop. Matt has taken it over. The only employee there, like him and his father. And his father, I think,
I
just
got
worked
thoughts
the
about that
register.
too later. I'll
A
tell.
lot of thoughts.
Yeah, yeah,
So so Annie runs this restaurant and Matt kind of like delivers rolls and baked goods to the town. We find out later, I don't know, apparently they're not very good. I don't know. um,
that I know. I'll jump in at any moment and ruin the
yeah.
whole damn movie. So you just keep
Oh,
going
by all
with your
means.
synopsis.
My favorite joke is because we watched this on the Hallmark app, and again, there's like 60 people listening, so I don't mind saying like I share the login. And my favorite thing is to make the joke that when I go in to watch it after someone else has, and it's at the end, they show the main couple kissing. And I'm like, well, great. Now I know how it
Now I
ends.
know.
um, so I don't starting this movie off and trying to explain what's happening is extremely difficult because we've got these two characters, and Annie is kind of the main. Matt is, the love interest, as we'll get into. But then there's the mayor who is nervous
Yep.
about like no income coming into the town. There's a few tourists. There is and sorry, I've got the IMDb in front of me so I don't forget names here, but
There's a cop. Yes.
there's the cop who may or may not be dating the mayor. I wasn't 100% sure. There's the
Right.
rich socialite whose husband just passed away that is also hosting a ballet company
Yeah. Yeah.
at her place.
As one does.
There is Mary, Annie's best friend, who is pregnant with. Is it the cop? Tim. Tim is someone. Is Tim the cop? Tim is not the cop.
It's the charter boat captain.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
his child. So like, and
Yeah.
all these people are introduced within like the first 5 minutes, and
Uh-huh.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. First thoughts of getting into this, like what was your take after like these 10 minutes?
Yeah, so I have one of my first notes is well, actually my very first note is there's one guy baking and he's made hundreds of different varieties of bread. Like that was my
That
very first note because like I know people who are bakers and you know from making a sourdough like one kind of bread is takes a long time.
the what like the sourdough, like when you use a starter and stuff, and by no means am I an expert, but like it's
Sure.
like a half a day process, like to make like two loaves. I mean, obviously you can kind of double that, but like he's making
Yeah.
loaves, he's making rolls, he's making baguettes. Like I don't physically know how it's possible. And I don't think we're kind of spoiling anything where at a certain point the bakery gets famous and like people are coming from
Sure.
all over the place. And still it's just this one guy that's baking everything.
Thousands and thousands of pieces of bread every day. Yeah, it's bonkers. But my third note is I'm 6 minutes in. I'm very concerned that I'm not going to be
Yeah,
able to keep up with this movie because I was like, if they
absolutely.
develop all of these plot lines, I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm in deep water here. I don't think I can do it. But
It was a lot. The other thing that concerned me right off the bat too is so the a few of the characters get off the boat and Brenda is kind of the socialite or whatever we
yeah,
want to call her. She comes off with a group of the from the ballet company, and Matt immediately is kind of goo goo eyes for this woman Nicole.
yes,
And
yes,
in that first scene, I'm watching and I'm like, is Nicole 17? What is happening here? Like
she's youthful. Yeah.
she looked very young. And, in later scenes when we kind of get to know her more, you see a little age there. But that first one, I'm like, what's going on with you,
Uh-oh.
Matt? Like, what's your deal?
Yeah. And I
um,
will say, like, I miss like 50 Shades like altogether. Like I had nothing to do with it. I don't really know anything about it other than it was the way that like people who knew nothing about kink learned about like
yeah.
like
I will
like
say, if you're ever going to watch them, make sure you rent it on Blu ray, rent it from your local library, and have to
yeah.
go to the front counter and ask for it.
Ask for it. Yeah, absolutely, yes.
because
Um,
that was the most uncomfortable conversation I've ever had in my life.
but like librarians are like here for it,
Yeah.
man. Like they're like getting everyone what they need. They don't judge you. They've seen some shit. Uh, um,
Sorry, I cut you off.
but like, so I understood that he was in a sequel or something. He's somehow connected with the franchise. And I was like, do you remember being a kid and like catalogs would come to your house and it would be like Sears or like J.C.
Oh
Penney or
yeah.
something? And like if you were like me, you instantly opened it to the underwear section so you could see
Mhm.
people in their underpants, as one does. And this was the days before the internet, folks.
This was pre-internet. Yeah, we had like, En Vogue videos on MTV and the Sears
Yeah,
catalog. Like
and the
that
Sears
was porn.
catalog. And you open up the Sears catalog to the men's underwear section, and there's Matt. He's wearing a pair of sensible briefs and a crisp t-shirt, gentle hint of some sort of manhood, nothing startling.
A
And
Ken
I was
doll
like,
for like all intents and purposes.
yeah, and I was like, this guy has no depth to me. Like, I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't understand him as a romantic lead. Like, I get he's a hunk, but like, I
Yeah,
don't. Yeah. So that was my initial tripping
yeah,
point is that I was like, I'm compelled by Annie. I think she's cute. I think she seems like she's, seen some shit. Like, she's
yeah.
got a life. And him, I'm like, dude, what value are you adding? None.
It's funny you say that because Leslie referred to him as unnerving. Like something
Yeah,
about him
yeah.
is like, I don't trust this. And maybe it was the 17-year-old girl that he was interested in,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah, 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 yeah. It was, yeah, that was, anyway, that was troubling.
so the setup is that Annie and Matt are best friends. They've never really kind of gotten together, and
Yeah.
by 10 minutes in, you're like, all right, they're getting together. Honestly, by like a minute in, you're like, okay, I see where this is going. I guess if you look at the cover of the movie, you know what's gonna happen. But
I was like, are they already together and they're gonna
yeah,
break up? Like, I was like very confused at the beginning. I didn't know, but I was like, okay, okay, they're best friends. They have a movie night, and the waitress hated it, so they broke up.
yeah,
Like, I
it
get it.
was weird.
That was another
so
subplot. Yes.
so they're best friends. They have like this movie night. We kind of get this info dump that Matt was dating a woman for a long time, and like they had just broken up. Annie, I forget what we got of her, but like she's single, and the obvious is like, why aren't you both getting together? But it kind of comes out that Matt is interested in Lauren, or sorry, Nicole, this, ballet person that just showed up. And then, Eloise, or sorry, Annie kind of has an interest in Philip, who is like the head of the small ballet company. Like, a lot of weird things happening there. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
there's kind of a romance between Brenda and Jean Pierre, Matt's dad. Which, by the way, Brenda mentions that her husband is dead about 5 times within like the first 2 minutes of being introduced, which
It
I thought
was
was a little odd
confirmed.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
uh,
was like, all right, I get it. She is definitely a wealthy widow.
yeah.
I get it.
I have it in the note here like she 100% had something to do with him, not being around anymore.
She planned his demise, absolutely, but it wouldn't be a Hallmark movie if we saw that. So,
What a fun,
no.
like, these movies have kind of evolved in the last 5 years or so. Like, what a fun little twist it would have been if, like, oh, yeah, I murdered him. But everyone's just like, oh, Brenda.
Right, exactly. It's a small town. We're just all together. We accept everyone's idiosyncrasies. We're
Yeah,
fine.
it's quaint. Um,
Yeah,
so the whole Matt eventually, he tries to hit on, I keep forgetting her name, Nicole, and she shoots him down like 2 or 3 times. We get this
yeah.
scene in the diner where Annie meets her for the first time, but like she's not allowed to eat any carbs for, I guess ballet reasons. Which that whole scene in general was really weird because we get her, whoever her kind of co-pilot or star or whatever you call it in the ballet, they're both like eating. Literally, she just orders a hamburger with no
Oh,
bun,
a
no fries,
hamburger
like yeah,
patty. That's yeah,
just a patty. And I think the counterpart does the same. But then Philip, the director, is just like burger, shake, fry. Like, what a dick.
He he is, and yet I liked him anyway. Like, so that
Right?
maybe that says something about me. I'm like, at least he's someone. Like, at least
Yeah.
he has some
A
motivation coming from somewhere. Everyone else is like
there's
bobbing gently across the
there's a
surface
lot
of the
to be
water.
said for the accent too, right? Like it's very
Yeah,
charming. It's like, oh, he's being an asshole, but like, if it was like a
yeah,
deep south like kind of twang, like it would have been a whole different
yeah,
movie. But um so Matt is kind of pursuing Nicole, but she keeps shooting him down. So he eventually asks Annie to kind of
yeah,
like be his wingman or wingwoman or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
Which is interesting because immediately the next scene after having this conversation, Annie makes a few comments that like you need to put yourself out there and just be
yeah.
yourself. And he goes over and pretty much wins Nicole over, right? Like after that, like there's really not a lot of pursuing after that or Annie trying to help, which I thought was funny because I assumed that was going to be most of the movie.
Well, because she got nailed by Nicole got nailed by Philip because she was emotionless in her dancing. So she knew she had to go on a date because her dancing
So
was
weird.
flat and uninspired. Yes.
Yeah.
So I feel like, let's be honest, Nicole was using Matt.
Oh yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And to that point, Matt's bread apparently has just, I think at one point Matt invites Nicole to his bake shop at like for like a 5 in the morning baguette tasting, and he brings his baguette over to Annie's place to kind of taste test. And I've never seen this before, but like she's just like, no, this isn't good. Like it's just kind of subpar, and you get the impression that it's always been that way. So
Yes.
how is
Yeah.
Matt and his father like this was probably my biggest gripe or concern with this
Yep.
entire thing is like you get the impression that the bread has never been that good,
It's
yet he
never been
supplies
good.
it to the entire island and everyone's just fine with it.
And the only one. They're never like, oh, maybe we should bring someone to help. No.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. The dad was a fantastic baker when the
Yep.
mom was alive, right? So the bread's excellent. The island is thriving. The bread gets horrible after the wife dies or whatever,
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then just continues to be horrible. And it's like everyone's like, oh, like I was like, I thought he was gonna be in love at the beginning and then fall out of love and the
Yeah.
bread would suffer.
Would
But no,
suffer.
the bread's never been good.
That's was the most confusing part to me, that like how this bake shop has survived for this long by making shitty bread.
I mean, they only employ one person. That's how.
Yeah,
That's how they're
I guess. Um, so the bread's no good. Nicole stands up Matt that first night.
Yeah.
But then she kind of agrees to come back, and Matt makes this like amazing bread. And the whole idea is that like Matt's in love or has kind of found his muse, and
Yeah.
he starts making this amazing bread. Meanwhile, Nicole is kind of seeing Matt now, so like she's found her muse and has like passion, and like so she's doing great in the ballet. So the two have kind of found this like they're using each other for all intents and purposes.
Yes.
And I don't think Matt realizes he's doing it for the most part, but he 100% is. Um,
Were you able to detect any difference in her dancing? Because I wasn't. I
Absolutely
feel
not.
like she had
No.
the same rudimentary skills that she did at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like,
I've watched 2 or 3 seasons of Dancing with the Stars, so I consider myself a bit of an expert with the dance.
let's be honest.
Um,
Yeah.
but like, no, I could not. And the other thing that threw me off too was like, you know, fresh baked bread is never awful. But, you know,
Right. Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, it's, even just like the cheapest loaf of like Wonder Bread is like, this is still bread. It's still pretty good. But like,
It's a staple for a reason, right? Yeah.
we go, and I don't want to, give away the whole movie, although we 100% will. Like, he
Yeah.
starts dating Nicole, the bread gets good. Obviously, Nicole is only there to work on the ballet, and at a certain point, she's going to leave. So, when we get to the point where like that relationship is kind of ending, the bread goes to shit again. And like at this point, the mayor has kind of discovered the bread. Like the island has become hugely popular because this reporter from Seattle comes to the island and does a short piece on the ballet company. But then
Yeah.
in like the banter with his co-anchor after kind of mentions, oh, the spread was amazing and blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
like he brought back a bunch. So the town kind of has this boom, and the mayor has been super stressed because they don't really have much of a tourist industry. So like he's happy. every place else is super busy. Annie, the restaurant, is kind of blown up, and she even gets like an offer to sell it, which kind of comes back later. But like the bread is going crazy, and everyone's like losing
Yeah.
their shit for it. But then after the breakup or whatever you want to call it, the bread goes to shit again. And
Hmm.
the interesting thing about this is like you assume it kind of tastes the same as it did at the beginning, but like everyone seems so offended when they eat it. Like not even like this isn't very good again, like disgusted.
They like
Like,
let it fall back out of their mouths. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not good. It's not. And I know we'll cycle back through, but I got to say this real quick because I'll forget. Why in the heck does the dad not start baking again? Because by that point,
right?
he's in love with the wealthy widow. So I'm assuming his
Oh,
bread would be good. It's like, dude, the solution is in front of you and you're choosing not to use it. Like,
that
I
is
get he's
interesting.
retired,
Yeah,
but like for a day, for the day that the news people come, that's all. Like just
do
one day of
something.
good
Yeah,
baking.
I didn't even think about that. I was just so like kind of fixated on the fact that like how could his bread be this awful? Like what is he doing different? Like you need the dough, you kind of do the process. I assume they've been doing it for so long that like they kind of know what they're doing, but like to be so disgusted by a loaf of bread, like
Yeah,
it was a lot to take in.
yeah,
At this point,
yeah.
I have a note for the second time that says like, how the fuck is he making this much bread? Because like,
It's true.
so he's doing it himself, but then like as the town is kind of getting busy again, like the the bakery is packed and like there's a line out the door, and it's like,
Yeah.
how is he producing this much bread? And like
And
the
have
idea,
time
yeah,
for a nap like every morning because he goes to work at like midnight because he went right after
I
movie night, right?
assume,
So
yeah,
he goes at midnight, which is weird. I know a lot of bakers, none of them work at midnight, but fine. He goes at midnight. He needs the extra time, I guess, because he's making all that bread. But then he goes to sleep for an hour, like before his deliveries in the morning. I'm like, dude, like go at 1. Like if you have that
yeah.
extra time, just like go later. I don't.
Well, and he's always kind of like he's either at the bakery baking or he's just wandering around the town. Like I don't
Yeah,
understand how this guy was standing up by like the end of the day because he is like
yeah, yeah,
he's
yeah,
got to be going in the middle of the night. And then I think that first night when he's supposed to have the date with Nicole and she stands him up, he's literally baking through the night. Like he asks
yeah,
Annie if he can come back to her house at 3 a.m. so she can try the next loaf of bread. No, fuck off. Like, um,
yeah. Like absolutely not.
so he's like running on zero sleep at this point.
Yes.
And the other thing, and I know we're kind of just jumping all over the place, which is 100% fine. Like, so Matt is kind of dating Nicole. Annie is kind of dating Philip, and they keep like they go to the same bar for a date and kind of bump into each other. And at this point, there seems to be a rivalry, which we really don't get any info on. And like
Yeah.
they start butting heads, and like Annie really kind of kicks it up to like the next level. Matt is kind of just being his whatever, like obnoxious self. Annie seems
Yeah.
legitimately pissed. Like there's times where he
Yeah.
comes into the restaurant, she's like, "Oh, we're shut down," and he's like, "It's 3 in the afternoon." And he's like, "No, we're out of food." And like this happens with Nicole, like when they're on a date there. Like
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
obviously they're gonna end up together, but like halfway through the movie, I didn't understand why Annie was so pissed off at Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. He hadn't done anything like
Hmm,
other than not appreciate her whole life long. I mean, like
I
that
guess,
that could maybe start
but
grinding on you at some point, but you know.
men, you know,
Or perhaps it was because this is another favorite point, a small point, but a favorite one is that the best friend,
Hmm.
the pregnant best friend, was a psychology minor. And that's mentioned several times.
It
And
is.
I was like, y'all are 40. And like if you're still talking about your college minor and like really like hanging your hat
Yeah,
on it, it's like, dude, like pursue it if it's if that's like something that's
exactly.
so important to you. But the psychology minor that points out that obviously they've always been in love, and someone
She's
tells
in
you
the
that
Met,
enough, and you're like, oh, okay, fine, I guess we are, which seems
but
to be
like
what happened.
but they've been friends since they were kids. Is this the first
Yes.
time that Mary, the best friend, is bringing this up? Like, this can't be some sort of epiphany. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I was
if she was a
very confused.
psychology major, she would have brought it up earlier,
Oh,
but
yeah, that's
because it was
true.
just a
The
minor,
minor.
it took a while. Yeah.
I wonder what her major was. Like that,
Well, I know. It's the worst.
So I don't know, where the hell are we at this point? Like, so Matt and Annie are kind of dating their respective others.
Yeah.
Annie and Philip, their relationship is very much like, it's not gonna last. They're kind of just seeing each other. Matt
Yeah.
even makes a few like snide comments that like, oh, watch out for that guy. I can tell like he's not
Yeah.
into like long-term relationships. Matt, on the other hand, is like getting to the point where he's like head over heels for Nicole. And
In like 2 dates. I don't understand, but yeah.
well, again, this is your first viewing of these.
This is
That's
how
a
it goes.
long time. Like,
Okay.
they should be married by this point.
I'm with you.
So the whole thing kind of culminates in a presentation of the ballet at like the studio where they're working, which
Yeah.
I was very unnerved, and Leslie was a lot worse by the fact that like these people came all dressed up, like Matt's in a suit, but they're all just like sitting on stairs and
On
like the
the
floor.
stairs.
And there's some chairs, but like for the most part, you're kind of just like hanging out in a gymnasium or something.
Like I'm their age. I'm
Mhm.
not sitting on a stair for an entire ballet. Absolutely
No,
not. I wouldn't be able to walk the next day. Like,
yeah. Uh, so so it goes great because
yeah.
Nicole's been using Matt for his, mojo or whatever we would call it. Um, but the next day, she kind of has the heart to heart that, like, look, I'm moving on. We're going to another place. Like, I'm just not going to be around. And breaks Matt's heart. Philip and Annie are pretty much just like, yeah, like, you're leaving. This is fine. Like, and
Yeah.
by this point,
I have a question about
yeah.
that, but we can
Oh,
get to
yeah,
that.
please.
So Philip goes to Annie's house after the date,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh, could I come in and see your paintings? I know a
Mhm.
gallery owner." And she's like, "I don't know. What if you don't think they're good?" And he's like, "I know you. I think they'll probably be good." And then he's like, "You're just not ready." That's about sex. Yes, it's not about the painting. Like, I think it is. But like, as a clueless individual, I was like, maybe he really does just want to see the paintings. Like, I don't know.
Potentially. If he would have finished it, because we're not married, maybe that would be, yeah, I
Right,
don't
right,
know.
right, right.
That's valid. That's valid. I'm assuming it's like a double entendre. Like
He
he's,
wanted to get in that house.
yeah.
Yes. Like, absolutely, yes. Like,
But to your point, like Matt does imply that like he's just going around the country like banging women because, the accent
right.
and the fact that like he runs a ballet company, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was painting her sex. Like, I don't know. There was a lot of undertones of the 50 Shades movies here too.
Uh-huh.
Which, by the way, not to get completely off topic, but if you do ever get interested in You're Baking Me Crazy,
Yeah.
it also is like, what's her name? Eloise is in that as well. And there's a lot of weird sexual tension that goes on in that movie too. Like one of the
Interesting.
horniest Hallmark movies I think I've ever seen.
Huh.
And Brenda is actually in that as well as one of the judges of like the food truck competition they have.
Okay.
If you get interested, by all means.
That's
So
amazing. Yeah, I'm all for it now that I'm in this world.
so all right, so Nicole kind of, dumps Matt. Matt goes into this funk. At this point, the Annie is so pissed off at Matt, and we kind of discover at this point, I think she even makes a few comments to Mary that like, I'm in love with him, but it's too late.
Yeah.
Because he's, into Nicole. Mary says, well, Nicole left, like, here's your chance. And Annie's kind of like, well, look at the way he's reacting to the breakup. Like he's obviously into her. Like this is not for me to
Yeah.
swoop in.
Yes.
This is where the selling of the restaurant comes back in, where she's like, I'm gonna go to France and work on my
Yeah.
painting and become an artist. She's selling the place, and like, we're getting to like the last 15 minutes, so we kind of see where this is going.
Right.
Matt's bread is garbage again. But then he does have this moment with Annie and realizes that he wasn't making this amazing bread because he was in love with Nicole. He was making this amazing bread because he was having these conversations with Annie about pursuing Nicole. And really, he's in love with Annie. And like, that's why the bread was amazing. Here's my question though. Do you think Matt is really just kind of into the confrontation and like, because in my eyes, like you could say that Matt was also baking this amazing bread because him and Annie were fighting so much, and like that's Matt's kink. Like he likes to be,
Yeah, absolutely
kind of
yes.
talked down to.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, there's got to be something. He must have depth somewhere. Like, so I'm willing to say that that's it. I'm willing to say that he is a submissive fellow, and he would like to have someone be stern to him. Like,
Good for
absolutely
him.
yes. He's like, I can't
So
swim. Like, save me. Yeah, like absolutely yes. It started early. Like, absolutely
eat,
yes.
eat this bread, isn't it shitty? Tell me all about it. Tell me I'm a failure. Um,
So true. Oh no, I
um,
can't.
so we kind of get to the end where Annie is leaving,
Yeah,
and Matt kind of pursues her. And yeah, we didn't even talk about it. There was this like weird story about how when they were younger, Annie saved Matt from drowning, and that's why he hates the
yeah,
water and whatever.
yeah,
So Annie's leaving. She's going to get on this boat. Matt kind of runs down and is going to stop her. He's about to dive in the water. Then all of a sudden, Annie walks out from behind and is like, oh, I forgot my passport, blah, blah, blah. They have this whole thing. And the whole idea is like, because we set up this, oh, I can't be with him because he's obviously in love with Nicole, he gives her a slice of the bread that he made because of her. And it's like, oh, this is delicious. Obviously, you love me. And there we go. That's how we wrap
yeah,
things up.
yeah, yeah. That's just how it goes.
um, the
That
other,
is just how
the
it goes.
and if there's anything else you want to kind of touch on, let me know. But the only other thing that I thought was insane was when the bread gets shitty again and the mayor's freaking out and the town's freaking out. Everyone in this town starts to try and set up Matt with someone
Yeah,
that they refer to as like their niece or cousin or whatever. And like,
yeah,
at a certain point, I'm like, are these people hiring prostitutes that they're bringing in to try and like seduce Matt just so he starts making good bread again? Like that whole scene was
right.
insane to me.
And the first one was a budget Annie. Like she was like close
Yeah.
but no cigar, I felt. But I was like,
She was
yeah, they
definitely
were
like
like,
the stunt double or something.
because they wanted Annie, the whole town, there was a town meeting, which we are led to believe they have all the time because there's only
Which
15
was
people in
also
town.
insane. Yeah.
And they're like, we need someone to fall in love with Matt so the bread's good again because we can't ask his father because why would we do that anyway? But so they're like, where will we find someone? Oh, it's Annie, obviously. And Annie like cries and runs out because she already knows she's in love with him and
Yeah.
what in the world. And then the boat captain goes, I know, the internet. And they're like, yes, that's
The
a great
internet.
idea. We'll find women on the internet. Every dating site you can think of. And I started thinking of dating sites and I was like, they're on Plenty of Fish, they're on
Yeah.
Silver Singles, they're on like any place they can possibly find a woman.
And again,
Yes,
you
you're.
can't forget that this is all happening at a town meeting at the local
Oh, yeah.
bar. Like the
Hmm.
town has come together to talk about how shitty the bread's gotten and to
Yep.
find someone to fuck Matt.
Yeah. They're like, this is an emergency. It needs to happen.
We gotta get Matt laid ASAP.
Yep. Yeah, it needed to occur. And he has no desire to pursue, like, I mean, I guess he pursued the dancer, but like,
Yeah.
she was like a cardboard cutout and he's like a cardboard cutout. So, like, there is no chemistry in this movie. There is none, like, according to me. I don't know if this is the depth of,
Yeah.
like, I was like,
No,
I don't want anyone to get together. No.
exactly. Like, I still don't think that Matt and Annie were really in love with each other. Like, it just seems like convenience at
No.
this point. Um,
I, I
yeah, go
also want
ahead.
to say one thing as the quirky brunette in my own life. Like, when you have a crush on someone and they literally like lose their minds over like a slim blonde who's nothing
Mhm.
like you, they aren't generally going to turn towards you after that and be like, "Oh, I don't know why I
Well,
didn't fall in love with you." Like it's very rare. I'm just saying. Like
well, even because, and we made this joke last night as we were watching, because at a certain point he's describing Nicole and like all the things that he likes about her, and he's like, and her personality and stuff. She's a lot like you.
yeah,
And then in your head, like, she just doesn't look like you. Is that what you're trying to
exactly.
convey here?
I mean, like yeah, like he has a type and she is not it. So like
Yeah.
Because you don't hang out with someone your entire life long and never have like an, I mean, everyone gets a little
Yeah.
sloppy at some point. It's like, hey, want to fool around? Like, no, none of that. Like, no.
Well, especially that, like they're hanging out on a couch, they're watching a movie. Like I'm assuming there's wine involved at some point. Like
Yeah.
there's only so many people on this island. Like at a certain
Yes.
point, you have to be like, look, let's just give this a go because, like, what the hell else do we have? You know?
Yes.
Um,
I was horrified during the when the bread is good,
and the
and
town
the whole
goes into his bedroom.
no, 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 no. That's funny too, though. When the bread is initially good, and they're all together again because it's the town and they're always
Yeah.
together. Um, and the news is on, and they're like, Matt has saved the town, and he's like,
Right?
yay! And so he like jumps up, and he and Annie have a moment. I couldn't have done it without you. I couldn't have done it
Yeah.
without you. No shit. But like the entire town is jumping up and down in the background going, they love us. We're windward.
Yeah.
They love, and I was like, I am so embarrassed. I like rewound because what the hell are they saying? And I was like, this is
It took me a while to catch it
hysterical,
too.
like
Yeah.
horrible. Like I would melt into the floor if that happened in a place I was. I'd be like, absolutely, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. And now that you say it, like, and I think so there's this other scene after the bread gets good again too, where like they all go into Matt's room, like the entire town is in there,
They
and I'm like,
do.
what the like, I
Again.
remember when I was single in like my early 20s or whatever, if someone burst into my room, an entire town, like, no, absolutely not.
Nope.
Like,
Because first it was just the mayor one time, and he
yeah,
was like, if you need to talk, and he's like, get out of my room, whatever. But then, yes, the whole town is there. Are they dressed in pioneer outfits? They are.
they are because it was the pioneer days. Yeah.
And he's not concerned. Like if I woke up and the whole town was in my bedroom and they were all wearing 1800s garb, I would
Yeah.
be like, something has happened to me. A
I've
stroke.
been like bit by something, like I'm having some
Uh-huh.
sort of fever dream. Like, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess he probably knew it was coming. Like, I mean, the pioneer days, not them in his room, but still, like,
I'm
yeah.
assuming based on this movie, they're in his room all the time. Like it's not, it's, a pretty
Yeah,
regular
he's like,
occurrence.
again?
Yeah.
And the mayor's like, dude,
Guys.
like you left your key in a bad spot. And he moves it and the mayor finds it anyway. It's bonkers.
The mayor was super
Um,
creepy. Like I have a lot of concerns about the mayor. Like there's
he
weird
was
things going
like,
on.
he was a mix between like Steve Buscemi and like
Yeah.
one of the kids in the hall. Which one was it? Uh, I wrote it down somewhere. But I was like, I was like, this is not,
Was he
I wish
Walter
I could,
was the mayor, right? I'm trying to think of which he does have a bit of a
I
Dave Foley look about him.
Dave
Like
Foley,
it's
yes,
yeah.
that's who I'm thinking of. Yes. Like
Yep.
young, whatever,
Yeah.
kids in the hall days. And you're like, oh, like what? And
He
he
also
needs
has like
love.
oh, for sure. But I did like I 100% not even a joke. I thought at a certain point he was dating the sheriff of the town. Like
Yeah, they had a few interludes for sure.
even at the ballet, like they came together and were sitting next to each other. Like obviously, you can go to a
Yeah.
ballet with a guy friend, but like it felt like there was some chemistry there. And like that
Yes.
movie, I would actually really like to see. Like that seems like it
Uh-huh.
would be a lot of fun. Um,
Agree. One
so,
other little point that I
oh
just want,
yeah,
I know we gotta move on, but uh
no,
no, two good points. The Annie and Matt fight where she screams in his face, "This isn't about you," when it clearly is only
yeah,
about him. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, I get she's
yeah,
mad because he's self-centered, but like, I was like, well, you're only upset because you love him. And then he kicks a bucket as hard as he can, and then he does like a really poor fake limp. And I'm like, oh, like you couldn't do a real fake limp? Like, yeah. So I was like,
classic
that was a
Matt.
limitation. Yeah, classic.
Was that the last fight, like before she
It
left,
was.
or because again, the next morning is when his bread is amazing again, and like
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
point they're not kind of together. So again,
No.
I think Matt has like a special kind of kink where he likes, the arguments.
And he made pastries.
Yeah,
Like, did you catch that? But like,
yeah.
not only did he bake the good bread, but he made it, like, and everyone keeps it. They're like, and he made pastries.
And
Like,
again, how the fuck did he do all that? Like,
he was really mad. He was really mad. So he worked so fast.
Just gonna make this.
Um,
And they show him kind of kneading the dough, and he's like pissed off, and it's like, dude, like you gotta calm
and
down a bit.
we already know that they have an industrial mixer. Like that's,
Yeah,
I'm not fooled. Like he's, but
it's too
yeah, like,
much.
and they have a boulangerie, and you're telling me the bread's never been good? Like, no, that doesn't make any
That's
sense.
that's the like at the heart of it. That is the biggest like kind of what the fuck in this entire movie is like. How has this bread been shitty for all this time, and like no one has had an issue with it?
And
I
Matt's
don't know.
had a few conversations with Annie where she's like, I lived in Paris and there was a bakery that had a line out the door and the bread was, and like he had never heard of like
Yeah,
someone making a simple food very well, which makes me
yeah,
anxious.
yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
like I'm like, you should know, you should at least know, even if you were not on that level yet, you should at least know it's possible.
Read a book, all right? Pick up that Tartine book that every other person picked up like during the pandemic and just fucking read it, all right? Like
Yeah, yes, yes,
that's
yes.
all you got to do, Matt.
Oh my
All right.
goodness.
Anything else? I feel like we've jumped all over the place, but it's
We
absolutely
did.
perfect. Yeah, I don't know. I think that covers me, but by all means, I have no problem talking about this for the next 3 hours.
I think the only other thing that I wanted to say, and this might be a Hallmark movie thing, so I need you to
Mm.
tell me. The entire plot seems like something that you would make up when you had a crush on someone in like junior high school. Like you'd
Mm.
be like, he's overlooked my value, but then I'll show him that he can be a star. And that like, and it's like really like kind of tortured and there's too many twists
Yeah,
and turns and like he doesn't like you in the first place, which like why are you still hanging your hat on that? Like and but they're 40, so it's like very disturbing. Maybe they're not
yeah.
40. They read as 40 to me.
It feels yeah, like late in 30s at the very least. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's interesting because I don't think there's always not always, but a lot of the Hallmark movies do have the kind of oh they're fighting the whole time, but then we get together
Sure.
at the end. This is one of the first I've seen where like the two people are dating other people, and like at a certain point, I don't know if you thought like I was like. Oh, is this going to be more Matt and Nicole? And
Right.
is Annie going to end up with Philip? Like, I wasn't quite sure where it was going. So yes, I would say it's kind of a trope of these Hallmark movies where like the woman's like, "Oh, I'm going to change him or fix him," but like this one in general is a real mind fuck for your first one. Like I like
Yeah.
halfway through, I was like, "This is not your typical Hallmark story," and it kind of hits all the same points that a lot of these movies do, but like there's so many characters and there's so much going on and there's so
Yes.
much like there's always a bit of a like what the fuck, but like this one there's so many like how is this happening, why are they doing this, like there's a lot. So I would say this is not your typical Hallmark movie, unfortunately, for your
Okay.
first viewing.
I'm gonna have to revisit this. But like
Yeah,
I'm just imagining myself making a list of like pros and cons. And like
yeah.
Annie has so many pros. Like
Hmm.
she's well traveled, she has been through some things, she's an artist of some kind, she is a successful small business person, whatever. And Matt doesn't appear to have really anything going other than the fact that he looks like a Sears underpants model. Like
Yeah, and
that's it.
like
That's it.
he doesn't even like particularly interested in his bread, right? Like he's kind of
No.
accepted like this is as good as it's gonna be, whatever. And like he doesn't seem to do any sort of like research or like what else could I
No.
do to make this better. He's just like, like even I think the first scene we see him delivering rolls to the I
Yeah.
think Brenda, like he sees Nicole and he kind of gets flustered, but like he drops everything on the ground. He's just like, I guess 5 second rule, huh? And it's like, do you not take pride in anything you do, Matt? Like, come on.
He doesn't. He doesn't have that part of himself. And like,
Now,
yeah. Yeah, it's bonkers.
all right. So the big question: You're happily ever after. Who from this illustrious cast could you see yourself kind of riding off into the sunset or spending, at least some of your days on this island off the coast of Seattle with?
I have a good person answer and I have a
Oh yeah.
bad person answer.
Oh yeah.
So my good person answer is I'm taking the dad, obviously, because he's
Yeah.
Santa Claus. Like
Hmm.
he pulls magic out of everyone, and he would probably pull it out of me. I'd probably be better at everything. So like fantastic. But my bad answer is obviously Philip because like I think he's a bad dude and like maybe for
Yeah,
a little while I'd be into it. Like who
for
knows?
sure. Yeah. I think my pick would be Brenda. One, she's obviously loaded. That house was super nice. She
That's
seems,
true.
yeah, like she seems perfectly content with just having like me or whoever as like her, sugar, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I could be perfectly happy there. My only concern is the murder. At a certain point,
Yeah.
is she
You
gonna
watch your
murder
back.
me? Yeah.
Yeah.
But like she would be my pick for sure. I think Philip is a great choice. Like, I think,
Yeah.
you could travel the country with him. I think you would be concerned if you really had feelings that he's obviously cheating like constantly. But
100%. And then also like he seems like someone who would neg you a lot. Like he would
no,
be
yeah.
like, you don't even look good in that outfit, and no one would love you but me. And
Well,
like
the
eventually I'd be
meals, yeah,
right, and eventually I'd be like, I have better self-esteem than I ought to, so this is not going to work for me.
yeah.
Like,
And just like
I
the
can't.
the dining situation, like I want a full burger too. All right, Philip, like, I'm not just gonna eat a
Precisely. I'm
patty.
not eating a patty. And
Yeah.
I love that she was like, I can't just order frozen burger patties for the rest of my life or whatever. And I was like, dude, get fresh burger patties for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Like, I don't,
That I had that same thought too. It's like you don't even make them fresh. Like, does nobody in
yeah,
this town care about anything? Like, I guess if you're putting it on Matt's shitty rolls, like you might as well just order like a
who
frozen
cares?
burger. Like, who gives a fuck?
Because I watch a lot of Kitchen Nightmares reruns as well.
Yeah.
And I can just hear Gordon Ramsay in my head going, it's frozen.
That would be fun too. Get him in there, try and fix whatever the hell's going on with those two. All right, so I think that kind of
Okay.
wraps up our conversation of the baker's son. The big question: would you recommend this? Yes or no?
Who am I talking to? Who am I, who am I
Whoever.
misrepresenting?
If it makes you feel better, I'll go first and say no. I don't think I would recommend
Yeah,
this, and that is
yeah,
rare because usually I find some sort of charm in a lot of these, but like this one, just a
yeah.
lot of headaches. Yeah,
I mean, I feel like if someone was up for a challenge, like maybe they could find a deeper meaning in this than I did.
for sure.
I
I
don't know.
was so to your point, actually, and kind of thinking if someone's up for a challenge, or I do think if you specifically are looking for a Hallmark movie to goof on, like if that's kind of your point of watching these with like a group of friends and just kind of
Yeah,
make dumb comments, I don't think you could find a better one. Like this one
right.
is, like I say, in a lot of these, I find a lot of charm, and I think a lot of them do have, some really nice stories. This one, I think, is just pure like camp and confusion. So I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
that could be a good one for sure.
I have one question for you.
Yeah.
It's like the sunset question. So let's take a step back and look at this film and say like the main idea actually is that like love makes you a better person, right? It
Mhm.
makes you special and important and good at things. So what are you better at when you're in
Oh
love?
God. Oh God. You know what? My thing would be mowing the lawn. I My thing, like, so my wife and I, we have two kids, an 11 and a 4 year
Yeah,
old, and especially now that it's nice out, like, we like to
yeah,
spend time in the backyard, and like,
yeah.
like everybody else in the pandemic, we got like one of those inflatable movie screens so we could watch movies outside.
Oh, cool.
But like on a Friday night, like most suburban dads, I become obsessed with the lawn and having it,
Yeah,
somewhat tidy, and like because of my kids and my wife and us wanting to spend time outside, like I'm obsessed with like, oh, if we're gonna do that tonight, no, I gotta mow. Like I gotta mow. I gotta get out there and mow
yeah,
and like make
yeah.
sure it's good. Like, yeah, I think my lawn mowing
Okay.
would be the thing, which is 100% the most Hallmark answer I think like any
Yeah.
dude, quote unquote, could have. What would yours is gonna be a lot better. What would yours be?
Right, because I've already thought about it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not hearing this question for the first time instantly. I was gonna say like compromise. I am a
Oh,
selfish human being, but once I'm in love
yeah.
with someone, I'm like, dude, we both get our way. Like, You can have your way this time. Like whatever. Listening. Listening is another good one.
Oh,
Like
well, that's really nice. Mine was lawn.
lawn is good though. Like that is a love language of care for the people who are around you. Like
I
I
think
am
so. Yeah.
100% pro lawn as an answer. And it
Yeah.
has better benefits than compromising, quite frankly. No one cares
um,
about compromise.
no, in this day and age. All right, so that's the baker's son. All right, socials. We are on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. If anyone's still there, you can go to smalltownfailingpodcast.com to get links to all those. But on Instagram and Twitter, small and failing. Instagram, if you follow, I post up every day before, or every like the day before the episode. If you want to send in questions, we got a handful. First one, what's your favorite way to eat spam?
Ooh.
Mm.
All right. You
Do you want to
answer
go
first,
first?
then I'll go. Yeah.
I am so I don't know if I have kind of two ways. I like diced up with eggs as kind of like a breakfast thing. And
Yeah.
then two, kind of what I said earlier, like the thin sliced, really get it like fried, crispy and nice and like in like a
Uh-huh.
slider type thing. Like that's kind of my go-to.
Yeah. I am a eggs over easy,
Yeah.
vinegary rice and fried spam sort of
Oh,
human being. Yeah, yeah. I
very
love
nice.
rice and eggs. So like you put
Yeah.
spam on that, like that's the best thing that's ever gonna happen to me.
Nice. Have you ever been on a cruise by chance? Completely
I
side
never
topic.
have.
A lot of rice dishes for breakfast at sort of the buffet, and a lot like almost like a fried rice,
Really?
like breakfast rice. Like you know, take a look.
This this year's gonna be big for me. I'm going to witness 50 Shades of Grey from the library, I guess, and
From
go
the
on a cruise.
library.
Yeah, this is exciting. I've got a plan. Thank you for providing direction.
Next one. What indestructible food is a sneaky good movie snack?
Ooh, it would have to be quiet. I'm
Hmm.
looking for a quiet, indestructible food. Um, this is tricky. My mind
It's
is completely blank.
I mean, because I know you've got candy corn on here. I feel like that could be a good one. I enjoy
That could
candy
be
corn a
good.
great deal. I think, and I don't think this isn't really indestructible, but I do love black licorice. And if I sneak candy in, it's usually
Yeah,
black licorice.
yeah.
Which I don't know if you're a fan, but if you eat like the real black licorice, if you eat too much, you get some real bad, like sharp intestinal pains, which I have
Yeah.
done multiple times while watching a movie.
You're like, I haven't learned my lesson. I
No,
and by the way, like, anything shelf stable counts as indestructible in my book.
yeah.
Um, I like a junior mint.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm a
There's
fan
no good
also.
reason for it, like, but I just do. And
You don't have
I
to brush
also
your
like a,
teeth after. Like it's,
yeah,
you know.
no, it's ideal, and it's still chocolate. But I also like, I like a savory movie snack. So I would
Ooh,
like sneak in like a microwave cup of rice-a-roni or like a microwave cup of Kraft mac and cheese, and I would go to town on that before I ate my junior mints. So
I
that
like
might be how
that.
I rolled. Yeah.
Have you ever actually done that? Like snuck in like a full meal?
I haven't been to a film in like a
Mm.
really long time. Like we sometimes we go to see like they'll do like Buster Keaton movies at like the art
Oh,
house and they'll have like the meteorologist plays the organ. Like he does like the score live or whatever. But like that's not eating a meal sort of like the lights
yeah,
are kind of on. Like you're just so yeah,
yeah.
no, I haven't done that yet.
Oh, well, there you go. There's your third goal for this year.
My third
Uh,
goal, my birthday is Saturday, so this is my goal
oh,
for my 42nd year.
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, what indestructible food is actually hidden in the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I don't know that.
That
Is this a real question? I
it
don't understand.
100% is. Yeah. Well, I guess what would be like, because we've kind of talked, what is like your indestructible food that you don't like? Like, what is your, or even like candy, what is kind of your, no, I don't care for that,
Candy's harder because I like any candy truly.
right?
But
Yeah.
like, yeah. But so say deviled ham, I'm not crazy about. Oh,
Oh,
disgusting.
there you go.
But
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Yeah. I would say like You're 100% right. Like I see you do have Vienna sausages on here, and
Yes.
I remember when I was in high school, actually a friend of mine, she gave me a can of Vienna sausages as my graduation present. And I remember just
Uh-huh.
handing it to me and being like, look at the back. It's made with worms. And I'm like, that can't be true. But like since then, I've always been like, I guess Vienna sausages are made with worms. So like that, those have always concerned me a great deal.
That's that so that might be your pick.
Um, all right. What this one, I don't even know if I can think of an answer for this. What movie food do you totally wish was real? Like, I guess like a snack that you've
Oh.
seen in movies. The one that always pops to mind for me, and it's not a movie, but it's, do you remember the show Punky Brewster?
Oh, sure.
So every time she was eating breakfast, she was eating this box of sugar beasties. And I always
Yeah.
thought that was the most amazing name. And like if I was a kid or even now, if they
Yeah.
actually made sugar beasties, like that would be, I would 100% buy that.
That's incredible. Yeah, like I wish that I had a better I'm very bad at details, which is bonkers. I don't know anyone's
Yeah.
name and I never notice anything ever. Uh which that's a failing. I'll work on that this year as well. But like, um, I always wished, you know how when like kids are on their way to school and they're really rushing, and then the Pop-Tarts like fly up out of the
Oh,
toaster and
yeah.
they grab them out of the air. I want flying Pop-Tarts. I want them
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
and they're obviously the thing is, if you take a Pop-Tart out of the toaster, you are absolutely getting a second-degree burn on your
It is
fingers.
burning like hell. And yeah, yeah,
But
100%.
the kids are like, I think like when it shoots through the air, it dissipates heat fast, so you can grab it safely on your way to the
Or
bus.
they're eating them every day. And at that point, their hands are so burned and calloused that like they've built up
Absolutely true.
some sort of resistance. Yeah.
Like a
Uh,
professional chef. Yeah.
all right. I think this is the last one. And this one, just, I don't even know where to begin. What would movie chairs look like if our knees bent the other way?
Whoa. Okay. Uh,
I mean,
would it,
at this, they've got reclining ones, so I feel like you could just have them be the exact same.
I feel like, wouldn't it just be this? Like you're sitting
Really?
and then your knees go that way? Like it would
No,
just
I mean,
be a,
and I
I
guess
don't
if your
know.
knees went the other way, would you have to walk on all fours? Like, there's a lot of follow up questions that I don't know if we could, answer this exact thing. But yeah, I'll go with yours.
Yeah.
Like, it's more of like a
Yeah,
cup
I don't
shape,
know.
I guess. All right, so
Like you
that's it
could
for
sit in a
questions.
beanbag no matter
Oh,
what.
well, there
The
you go.
beanbag thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The movie theater would just be a bunch of bean bags, which sounds all
They're
right.
filthy. They're just
Yeah.
full of soda. Yeah, it's horrible. I can't
Oh
even.
God. Yeah. And not
I
to
had a
mention,
bad
like,
idea.
I just the thought of sitting in a beanbag that like 100 other people have sat in that day, like, really makes me super uncomfortable too. Like those massage chairs at the mall that like
Yeah.
people pay for, or
Yeah.
sometimes just sit in the like. I have always had an aversion to those because I just assume people are sweating and sitting in those, and then nobody ever cleans them. Like it's
I also like can't relax in front of people. So like that's
no.
another like I'm like, no, I don't need like same with like massages in the mall and stuff. It's like, no,
Uh,
absolutely not. No thanks.
Yeah, I not to go any further, but like massages in general just make me uncomfortable. Like I don't physical
Uh-huh.
touch and like contact and like
Yeah.
I just assume the
That's
person is thinking like, oh, you think you're fucking better than me because you can pay for this? Like, yeah, there's nothing
right.
relaxing about it.
I've never had a massage, and I told a
Me
neighbor.
either.
We just moved here, and I told the twins. I told a neighbor the other day, and she goes, "Don't you have aches and pains?" And I was like, "Yes," and I just live with them. Like that is the way.
That's life. Like
I think that if my tension dissipated, I would just cease to
I wouldn't know
exist.
what to do. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
so we have both worked in advertising, and I remember one agency I worked at every like Thursday would bring in a
yeah,
masseuse. And like
yep,
everybody would line up and be like, "Oh, this is amazing." And
uh-huh,
like I could think of nothing worse than sitting in a
uh-huh,
chair after someone I worked with just got like their knots worked out, and like
right.
walking out and walking past somebody else that's about to go in and do the same thing after I like
Nope.
disgusting.
I am exactly the same as you. Yeah, like Bob from account. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
not. Like And
Like,
also, like, I was like, literally, like, I am able to do this job because I'm wound so tightly that, like, I can bear all of this. And if I relax, like, I am never walking back into this office again.
no. And like, if I want to relax, I'll leave. Like, don't bring in like some masseuse to like,
Right,
you know, fool me into thinking I'm enjoying myself here.
right. Like, I'll go home and snuggle and watch a movie. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. Eat an entire funfetti sheet cake. Like, literally, I've got plans, you know?
It's very Liz Lemon, right? Like,
Yeah. Yes. Oh
all
my
right.
heavens.
Small Town Failing Podcast. You can find back episodes, links to the YouTube videos. You'll see this video up there. Spotify and iTunes reviews. Thank you so much to everybody that's done those. They're a huge help. Cameo, if you're looking for a great present for that special someone, Cameo. um,
Wait,
and
what
Small
is
Town.
Cameo?
So Cameo is that site where like you can pay $100 and one of the guys from the office will record like a personalized message for your loved one.
Oh, but
Like,
you'll do it.
yeah, I don't know how I got on there. I thought it was funny and I sent my stuff in, and then like a day later I got a text and they're like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we'll set you up. And
Ooh. You
yeah.
need to give that little disclaimer on each one so that I know, because I was like, I've seen a couple of these and I didn't even know what Cameo was.
Oh, it's
Now,
a whole thing. Yeah. Um, and then what else? Smalltownfailingpodcast at gmail.com if you want to send in any questions. And indestructiblefood.com is the website where you can find all of Sarah's wares. Any place else you want to plug or anything else you want to plug in general?
just Instagram at Indestructible Food. That works too.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. And I have to thank Christopher Micken for kind of connecting us as well. This
Yeah,
has been a blast. I hope this movie didn't completely throw you off from Hallmark because it would be fun to have you on again.
I would
And
love it.
yeah, perfect.
I'm for
Well,
it. Yes.
I don't know what we're doing next time, but we'll have something. And yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. Thank you again. And we will talk to you next time. All right. Bye.